Good evening and Shalom Aleichem to all Chaverai Hashluchim di B'chol Asar V'Asar. It's a beautiful experience and feeling to get together with everybody on this very important, auspicious day, Chav Zayin Adar. We all know what Chav Zayin Adar is. It's not an easy date. It's not Yitas Kislev, Molei Simcha, Rosh Hashanah Chassidus. It's Dafka, a very difficult time that we remember on this day. And actually, when they were preparing this shiur, Farbrengan, and they were making the sharblat to announce that this is going to be, there was one suggestion that it should say L'chavid Chav Zayin Adar. And that struck me, L'chavid Chav Zayin Adar, you say L'chavid Rosh Hashanah, you say L'chavid Chanukah, you say L'chavid Purim, you say L'chavid Tisha B'Av. This, in a way, is a mini Tisha B'Av or a big Tisha B'Av in a certain sense. And because we know, though certainly those who were then at that time, remember the Yemei Ha'or V'Akdusha, when the Rebbe was here, B'chaim Chayuse B'Almadein. And we also experienced the choshech and darkness that followed from then until our situation today. And I remember when the Rebbe used to kochzach by Farbrengan, and whenever he spoke about Golus, he would say, choshech kaful u'mechupal. And we didn't actually see a choshech kaful u'mechupal, but the Rebbe saw it. And this was when the Rebbe was B'Gashmius here. And certainly today, it's a very dark and difficult time. We have to recognize that the Rebbe's koyach is still going strong, with the Rebbe's teachings, the Rebbe's siches, and the mamorim, and everything that the Rebbe gave to us. And moistus are growing, and everybody knows there's so many more shluchim after Gimel Tammuz than before Gimel Tammuz. Yet, at this time, you could say the expression of the Medrash, Or v'choshech mishtamshim barbuvia. Darkness and light are mixed within each other. And in the expression in English there is, it was the best of times and worst of times. In the best of times, everybody is saying that even though the Rebbe isn't here, B'Gashmius to lead us, we still are able to build Chabad houses, and Chabad has grown exponentially in a very, very big way. On the other hand, we all know that internally it's not so simple. We don't have visible leadership. There's a void and there's a vacuum. And whenever new issues come up, there are chilukei, there may be differences of opinion, intense, not so intense, but it's not an easy thing to continue on in this way. The way to deal with it, it's not a solution, it's not a permanent solution. The permanent solution is Mashiach. But there's an expression in the Medrash many times, Mashal Adam, an example, a proverb of a person, Shahaya Mahalach Be'ishan Laila Ba'fela, was going in the darkness of night, and he had a panas biyodai, and he had a lantern, a ner biyodai. And with this little ner, if we see it and see the light, we also know there's the other expression, ma'at or derech har b'choshech, that little light, you don't have to be as big as the darkness, the little small light, and there's also the expression that the Rebbe uses in Ayam Yoim, Yesham Mamidim Panos, when you put down a lantern, Miskaptzim, people come around to it. And this little lantern and this little light is actually a beacon, a strong, very intense light, and that is the mimer that the Rebbe, last mimer that the Rebbe gave us, Yodei Akdoisha V'yata Tetzaveh, the mimer of V'yata Tetzaveh. This mimer is an amazing mimer. Actually, here in Albany, we started having a shiur and Siddur before davening on Shabbos. Kanahara, we have already almost 1 million by Siddur itself, thanks to Bechol Karis, who is one of the manhigim of this. And we learned V'yata Tetzaveh Daita Denavshin in a very strong way. We even learned it more than once. And this mimer addresses this very situation that we are in today directly. We all know that in terms of Basi Legani, that the Friedrich Rebbe left for us, the Rebbe said that in the Maimer there are Muslim, another Mirdea Ito Vergov, and other Muslim that show about this transition, about the fact that this was the Friedrich Rebbe's last Maimer. However, in Vata Tetzava, you don't need Ramazim, you don't need little allusions here and there. The whole Maimer, wall to wall, from front to back, and all over, speaks about the importance of a Nasi, and that the Nasi is the one who fuels everything. And it's the whole connection, the relationship between the Nasi and the Bnei Yisrael, that the Bnei Yisrael, v'yichoi lecha, they have to bring to you, and there has to be dafka Yisrael Tate, and then the main thing is kosis lamor. And the Rebbe kochsachin, there's so much there. Kosis, that it's dafka when it's pressed and crushed, lamor, you're able to get to the etzem of light, not just or, but more. And it just occurred to me, and probably I'm sure many people thought of it as well, that Viata Tetzava, the very words of the Maimer, the very Dibra Maskel, is the same word as Tzava. We need nothing clearer than that this is what the Rebbe gave us to hold on to see the light in this whole surrounding darkness. There is surrounding darkness, and despite the surrounding darkness, Baruch Hashem, we're managing, and there are pitfalls, and there's the whole expression in the Medrash that when you don't have the light, you can fall into this, shachas, and the mazikim, and everything else. But the main thing is to hold on to this light, especially as there's so many mamorim and sichas, but this maimer itself, V'yata Tetzaveh, is certainly the light focused, where the Rebbe boils it down into one maimer, and this is La'or Nisa B'Neilech, and it mentions in the Medrash, but that's not the real light. The real light is Achibok Alecha Alois HaShachar, the Alois HaShachar, when Mashiach will come. My father, it's his yortzeit coming up the Shabbos, Chavtes Adar. He used to give a mashal for this from a person who was in a train station in the olden times, before everything was computerized and everything was blinking and lights going on and off and telling the trains when to go and not to go, that there was a big accident in a little town. And they were researching if the person who was supposed to hold the lantern to tell the trains to stop, if he was there, if it was Omed al Mishmartoi, because something terrible happened, the train ran over some people, and they came and they said, yes, he was there, al Mishmartoi. They asked him, did you sway the lamp up and down and right and left as you're supposed to for a simon for the train? Yes, he did. But they asked him, was it lit? Was it kindled? Was the light in there? No. Unfortunately, that wasn't so. So you can stand there and you can shackle and turn this way and that way. The main thing is that the light should be inside. This light is the chayis and the lebedikite and the chassidus that the Rebbe gave us. And as I mentioned, all of that is focused in this one maimer. I used to go with my father from Montreal to New York, and before the through was completed, we had to go by train. That was the only way. And we used to go by train, a CPR and CNR. It was a whole thing from Windsor Station in Montreal. And then we used to come to New York the next day. We traveled overnight, and in the morning you could see the Hudson and the nice landscapes and all the little town of New York State. And everything was a beautiful ride. It was scenic, it was nice, especially if it was a sunny day. But the last few minutes, as the train was about to arrive in Grand Central, everybody knows, because Manhattan is built up, the train would plunge into darkness. It would go in through these tunnels, maybe a mile or two. And then I was a small kid, and I asked my father, what is this? He says, before you get to Grand Central, you go through a tunnel and it's dark. And I'm not from the biggest mevinim in these things, but this is a mashal for this manenu achshav, when we have to be able to hold on and to go by the light that the Rebbe gave us. Before I get into the meat and potatoes of this shir and Farbrengan, I would like to acknowledge, as you saw, that it's been advertised that in honor of my father's 18th yahrzeit, I'm launching a Shanghai video. We've assembled a lot of materials and documents and photos about that time. And even though my father himself and many of the other Shanghai who were there, and there are many Lubavitch families that come from those Shanghai Bochum who were there during the war, did not talk much about it. It was a painful experience. They were in Golus, and that was really Golus, and their parents and their whole families were killed out in Europe. It was no picnic. Shanghai was no picnic. And there were also difficult things and painful things that happened over there that they didn't want to bring up. And so, on the other hand, this is a very important part of our history. And it was a nes vatzola from Hashem in the middle of the war to send that diplomats to Gihara, to stamp their visas, to go through Russia. It's a big, amazing story. It's mamish a thriller, all the different details that we're finding out about this. So I would like to thank, there were several books written about this already. There's one from Kranzer, which has things that are not exactly authentic. There's a Feldheim book from Lublin to Shanghai. There are other books. There's a book by Rabbi Sabachkinsky, who was one of the 9 who came to Montreal originally. There's recordings. Rabbi Zelikson published some memoirs that his father was there. And Rabbi Reichik has material on this. However, this is the first time that this is being put from the Chabad perspective into a video, and this is very important for our children to be inspired. Our children should know that there was also a big darkness, a 5-year darkness, where they didn't know where they're coming or going, what's going to happen after Pearl Harbor with Japan. It was a very weird situation that Hashgacha Pratis put them into. And that is also the Kosis Lamor. That Kosis actually was the Mor that brought about the light later on. There's a lot to discuss more about this, but I personally, I have a chiyuv. It says that if a nes happened to your father in a certain place, there's a bracha, nosali nes, that nes happened to me, but really, it's not just me personal. This is very important for the world, the Jewish world, to know that the Lubavitch had a strong role in it. There was a yeshiva, 40 Bachrim there, and there were many, many stories and things experiences that they went through. And so therefore we hope this video will be a Kiddush Shem Lubavitch, and many of the major Torah organizations didn't know about this or pretended that they don't know about this. And if you would watch the comments, this was featured also on Vos's Nayas. One of the writers made a comment that if my father would have realized that I became Lubavitch, how he would feel about this. So someone else answered him, the yeshiva was Lubavitch, and my father was Lubavitch, and the Stam Olam Goyim know nothing about this. This is very important for us ourselves. Our kids should know about it, should be inspired by it, and I thank everyone for the support and input that they have been giving. Now, let us go into a little more of this shiur, of this Farbrengan, and I would like to focus on the pasuk V'kimu v'kibla Yehudim es asher chelu lasos. This has a very big impact on our situation today. Chav Zayin Adar and on. We all know that the Rebbe speaks a lot. There was the name of a mimer, of Mamorim of the Rebbe, V'kimu v'kibla Yehudim es asher chelu lasos. And also in this mimer Be'atet Tetzaveh, the Rebbe also bases a lot on this pasuk. The milo of Isarusa Dultata v'yichu elecha, that the Bnei Yisrael should bring the kosis lamor, the more that they get from this hard kosis. And the Rebbe is marich in the union of kosis lamor, and that you don't have to be mamish crushed, and you don't have to be mamish depressed, but just the fact that you're in Golus, the Rebbe has such interesting reicha werter that I don't think were ever mentioned before in Chassidus in that thing. So to understand this Gemara, to understand this expression and how it relates to Chaf Zayin Adar, I would like to go back to the origins, to the original place in the Gemara where it says this, and this is in Megillah Daf Zayin. A very interesting Gemara. Let's learn through the Gemara and Farbrengan it a little. The Gemara says, Esther min HaTorah minayim. Esther, Baruch HaKodesh Nemra. How do we know that Esther, Megillah Esther, was said with Ruach HaKodesh? It's a very interesting question. Many of us on campuses and other places confront Judaic studies professors and others who put down Megillah Esther and said, like, Nivra, and they say many other things, but they certainly don't think that's Baruch HaKodesh Nemra. The main issue is that Esther is from the Chavdal Kisei HaKodesh, and it's Metamis Yadayim. It's a whole Gemara about it. But the thing is that it doesn't have Hashem's name in it. Hashem's name is not to be found. And we know there's Ramazim, wherever it says Achashverosh, Achas Resh Shaloi, and Hamelach. So the Gemara is dealing with this, and the Gemara is trying to find sources. How do we know that Esther Baruch HaKodesh Nemra, that there was Baruch HaKodesh? Big Tanoim, 4 big Tanoim comment on this. Rabbi Lezer Agadol, Rabbi Lezer ben Hurkana says, because it says, Vayivoda Adover LaMordechai, because Mordechai found out about the plot of Bigson and Seresh. How did he find out? Was there Wi-Fi or computers? How did he find out what Bigson and Seresh were plotting in the palace? So this is a raya that Vayivoda Adover, that Ruach HaKodesh came to Mordechai and told him. Then Rabbi Akiva, Kul Alibid Rabbi Akiva, the big Rabbi Akiva, he says, the pasuk is, Vayomer Haman Beliboy. Haman thought in his heart, Omiach B'tzamelech, who would the king want to honor? And how do we know what went on in Haman's mind? Are we mind readers? So from this, Rabbi Akiva proves that Ruach HaKodesh Nemach, that the Ruach HaKodesh tells us what Haman thought. And then Reb Meir says, because it says, that Esther was very beloved, and they're popular by everyone. How do we know? Ruach HaKodesh. And then Rabbi Yosef ben Damascus says, because it says, V'abiza le'sholchas yodam, that the Bnei Yisrael did not rob the people who they attacked to defend themselves after Haman was hung. And how do we know exactly that this is true? What did we have a survey? So Mistama, Baruch HaKodesh Nemra. These are 4 Tanoim who give different opinions on the source of Esther Baruch HaKodesh Nemra. After this, Amar Shmuel said, Shmuel is not a Tana, Shmuel is an Amar. And he said, if I would be there, I would say to them, Didi adi from Mikolai. I have the best answer to all these things. What's the best source? Because it says, the once in Bnei Yisrael, when something mumata, it was niskal by Hashem, and Hashem confirmed it. Kimu. This is Shmuel's saying, and this is the source of the Kimu V'Kibla Yehudim Esashachel Lasas. After the 4 Tanoim speak, and after Shmuel has a better one than anybody else, then Rava says, L'kulu islu pircha. Rava goes down the line, takes each of the Tanoim, and says that they're not conclusive. It's lav dafke. How did Mordechai find out? Oh, very simple. Because we know that Mordechai was a Meyoshia Sanhedrin, and if you sit in the Sanhedrin, you have to have Shivim Yideh B'Shivim Loshen, and Big Son and the Seresh were speaking a foreign language, so therefore he was able to overhear and understand it. And the same thing, Rabbi goes down the line against Rabbi Lezer and against Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yosef ben Damascus, and he says that their proofs are not conclusive. Levarmed de Shmuel the less lepircha. Only Shmuel's has no question. And after this, the Gemara adds two more sources. Rabbi Yosef Omar, Rabbi Yosef says, because it says, how did the Megillah know that Lo Yavram T'ech HaYehudim is a sim bracha kodesh nemra? And Rav Nachman Yitzchak says, because at the end of that pasuk, well, Yosef Mizaram, how does the Megillah be able to predict for the end of time? That is because Baruch HaKodesh Nemar. This is the Gemara, the source of this pasuk that the Rebbe brings down, and this Maimer, and many Mamorim v'Kibel Yehudim as a Shekei L'Ashus. I would like to ask you a few klotz kashas here. Shmuel Amoyre, one Amoyre, he goes against all four Tanoim, and not only he goes against them, he says, if I was there, I would tell him I have the best. Now, don't you think that everybody who says something in the Gemara, Abaye, Rava, everybody is mocked him to say that I have the best idea? It's a little arrogant, I think, Chas v'sholom. So, first of all, there's a pasuk in Mishlei, b'Mukam Gedolim al Talmud. It's very rare that an Amoyre should go contrary to the deis of the Tanoim. Four big Tanoim are saying something quite a few years before Shmuel came around. And not only does he say a different opinion, he says, I never heard such an expression, to say mine is better than yours or Mikulan from all of them. And on top of this, there's an expression in Bereishis Rabbah, in the Medrash, that says, Aluva isa shanachta me'edoleh, that if a baker has to testify that this bread is very good, and he has to compliment it himself, a compliment has to come from a customer, a compliment has to come from someone else, from an objective person. The isa, the dough, the cake, the bread is embarrassed that the baker has to compliment it, no one else is there. So is that a way that Shmuel should compliment his own schayre and say, my drush is better than everyone else? And it's a question of Mavad Ber Rabbi Yisov. And I'll tell you something, in Pirkei Avos, you don't have to go to a bigger person than you and not knock him, but there is a Perek mission in Pirkei Avos, Perek Daled, that says about Chavrei Bezdin. There are three people in a Bezdin. So one person shouldn't, you're allowed to say what you want to say, but Al Toimer Kabul Daiti. Don't press, don't push, that you should, they should accept your opinion. That's up to them. It's a very common sense thing that you don't have to push. Everybody has opinions, and everybody has opinions in the Gemara. The whole Gemara is based on opinions this way and opinions that way, and no one is insisting on saying Didi Adif min Tchu. And here Shmuel speaks like that. This is several questions about what Shmuel said. Then, if you remember, most Mefarshim don't even bother with asking this question, but they don't even bother at all with the end of this Gemara. Rabbi Yosef Omar, Rabbi Yosef says from Mea Puramel Yavru, and Shmuel and Rav Nachman says from that pasuk. Now, if you know a little history, Rav Yosef was the Rav Muvak of Rav. Rav had two Rebbes. One was Rav Nachman Yaakov, he was Aiden by Rav Chisda, and he was by Rav Yosef, and Rav Yosef was his Rebbe. Now, isn't it strange that Rav isn't mentioning what his Rebbe, Rav Yosef, said? And don't you think he would know what he said, that he should even mention it here? And he says, he has a pircha on him too. I mean, he says everything, only Shmuel is the best pshat. His Rebbe, Rav Yosef. And I want to tell you an interesting thing that reminded me of our kashas with the Rebbe when we were in Yechidus in the good old days. And we went out, there was a dover, a pasha that you walk out backwards. This hanhaga, not to turn your back on the Rebbe, you walk out backwards. This hanhaga is a hanhaga that the Gemara says with Rava, that when Rava would go, and Rav Yosef was a saginor, Rav Yosef was blind, he wouldn't even have seen this cover that he's given, that Rava would walk backwards. Ad not v'damei. Not only that, but he would even get hurt from getting scratched from bumping into wherever he was backing into, and this was his iskashas to Rav Yosef. And there's many other stories about this relationship to Rav Yosef. So what is Rava saying? The only Shmuel, he never heard what his own Rebbe said. So I would like to suggest another pshat in this, the di adifim miditchu. You know, when you say adif, one is better, people think that he's saying it because Rav asked questions. It's not that. Shmuel is giving us another word entirely. Shmuel is telling us that the pasuk is that he's quoting, even though it's after the psukim of the Tanoim in the Mishnah, in the original Brisa, that pasuk is a more beautiful level, a more beautiful dimension of Ruach HaKodesh. She's saying Ruach HaKodesh. What is Ruach HaKodesh? Ruach HaKodesh, they said, was Vayevad Adar vel Mordechai. That's a very important Ruach HaKodesh, that he had a Gilul, and Mordechai was able to know what they were saying over there somewhere else. And Vayomer Haman Beliba, that we're able to read his mind. So these are all nice Hisairis Milmaila. Mordechai didn't do anything about it, and Esther didn't do anything about it. Milmaila, it became that and that Mordechai found out. All these things are very good. But the real Ruach HaKodesh, the real powerful Ruach HaKodesh is Dafke when it comes Achar Shekimu V'Kibla Yehudim. Kimu Mamayla Mashikiblu Mata. This is the Nakuda, actually, that Tais asked a question, that Rav himself says something somewhere else. This is the same Nakuda of the whole Indian of Purim, that B'mei Achashver, B'mei Matan Torah is Moidor Abelar Aisa, because Kafalem Arkagigis, and as Alter Rebbe explains, it was tremendous Ava that came down. So therefore, this was nice. Shavuos is nice, Gilim Torah nice, but it's not the real Kabbalah. The real Kabbalah is in a time of Haman and Gzeres Haman, when there is no Harkegigis, and it's Choshech like we have in our time today. And then when we are able to be Mekabel, B'nei Yisrael Mekabel Mamata, then it's Mekuyim Umayla. That is the Ruach HaKodesh. The Shmuel says the Diadei from the. I want to tell you about we're not arguing which pasuk it is, but I want to tell you, we're not just talking about a little level of Ruach HaKodesh, we're talking about the level of Ruach HaKodesh of the Maimer V'Yata Tetzaveh. This is also, we all know it's brought down of Chassidus, that Roitzad Mekav Shaloi Metisha Kam Shel Chaveiro. Even if you get 9 Kam Shel Chaveiro, you want something that you produce yourself. And this is what Shmuel says, the Diadifa. This is better even because it comes Mumata, Esaris Mumata, that brings down the service Mumayla. You can also be Mekashet with Shmuel, who says Tata Govar, and Rav holds Ilo Govar, and Dafke Shmuel holds Tata Govar, the lower thing that has the stronger heat, and that is the most influence. So according to this, what Rav Yosef and Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak are saying from Lo Yavru is not just a prophecy that will come in the end of time, that we are prophesizing that Purim will always be. What they're saying is this strong dedication that Bnei Yisrael had then, that they were able to be stick through the hard times on their own, not from Kavla and Gar Kagigis, not from Giluyim, not from seeing the Rebbe visibly every day. But they did it on their own. That is B'kav Shaloi. That is even greater, and that's where the Gemara actually says in Shabbos, Kol mitzvah shekibu aleim any mitzvah that the Jews accepted on themselves, even at the pain of death, so what Rav Yosef and Rav Nachman are saying is a result of Shmuel. What Shmuel is saying causes, because the Bnei Yisrael was so dedicated, and they did it on their own. These things came in Farbrengan. Shmuel's dedication of the Bnei Yisrael Lamata, less Lupircha. It's not just a mice of droshes, of this drosha, that drosha. This kemenish upbringing, this must continue. And therefore, the proof to this is like not b'shas hag Megillah, that you will look forward, that they said it will predict that it will be later on. Today, when we're over 2,000 years from Purim, and we still have Purim, and Yosef Mizaram, and Mizaram means even Zera Yisrael, even not Mamish Yehudim who are fully observant. That is all a cause and effect from the story, from what Shmuel said. And I want to mention, I was speaking to Rabbi Gamilsky about this today, and he mentioned to me that there's one of the people in Shanghai, a big lamdan, his name is Lubart. Not Lubavitcher, but his name is Lubart, Nosson Lubart. And he says a beautiful word on this, that when Shmuel, the Gemara says, Tav v'papel charifta, it's better one small pepper of Shmuel, mitzana molikara, from a bushel full of melons or whatever else, the gourds and the big squashes over there. So it doesn't mean that Shmuel's pepper is good on its own, this little pepper. It has sharpness, it's pretty sharp it seems. But it's not against the other ones, but you cook them together and it becomes one, and this small palpal charifta is nice and tam in the whole Sanim Alapar. So I want to say B'Shem Oimroi, and it was also one of the Shanghaier who said this, who had a Chassidus Hergish. This Nekuda, that a Didi Adifim Minitchu, is something that we should remember. Didi, something that comes from us ourselves, is even better than the Tanoim, the Amoraim, if we're able to stick it out and to hold on to the Rebbe's lantern, to hold on to the Rebbe's ner, and to make from it a kosis lamor, it certainly will bring the Alois HaShachar, the Vias Mashiach Tzidkenu.